traps that will make you never open your door again. Part 10. The repeated break-in. Anna had never imagined that her peaceful life could be upended in the way it was. Her quiet suburban home, once a sanctuary from the chaos of the world, had become a place of anxiety and fear. After the first attempted break-in, she had been shaken to her core. But now, only minutes later, the nightmare was about to repeat itself. It had been a long evening, one filled with the usual routine of putting her kids to bed, checking on homework, and preparing for the next day. As she sat in the living room, her mind wandered, trying to settle from the unease she had felt earlier. The unsettling feeling from the first break-in still hung in the air like a heavy fog, but she tried to push it away. She couldn't live in fear, she thought. She had to remain calm for the sake of her children. Yet every creak of the floorboards and every gust of wind outside felt louder than usual. Just as she was about to turn off the lights and head to bed, her phone buzzed. Again, it was the Ring Doorbell app. Motion detected at your front door. Anna's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the screen, her stomach sinking as she saw the same shadowy figures from earlier. The same men who had tried to break in before. The unmistakable figures were there, standing at her doorstep, their presence just as chilling as the first time. The same dark hoodies, the same silent demeanor, the same calculating stillness. The only difference was that now there were two of them, and they looked angrier, more determined. Panic surged through Anna as she grabbed her phone, quickly pressing the button to communicate through the intercom. Her voice wavered as she spoke. "I've already called the police. You need to leave now." But the men didn't answer. They didn't react at all. They just stood there, unmoving, their faces obscured by the darkness and the hoods. Anna's hands trembled as she watched them through the phone, trying to keep her voice steady. She couldn't understand why they were back. Why hadn't they just given up? This time, she wasn't just frightened, she was furious. They had already tried to break in once, but they had failed. Why were they back? What did they want? Seconds turned into minutes. Anna's breath quickened, her heart racing, as she saw the men remain motionless, still standing at the door. She could feel the pressure building in the air. The fear that had only slightly subsided after the first break-in came rushing back with full force. She knew this wasn't a coincidence. This was a direct threat. The silence on the other end of the door was deafening. Then, just as she was about to give in to the terror, the doorbell rang. 3 sharp rings, one after another, cutting through the silence like a scream. Anna's blood ran cold. She stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Her first instinct was to grab the kids and hide, to lock them in the bedroom and wait for the police to arrive. But she couldn't shake the feeling that these men wouldn't just go away. They weren't leaving. She was sure of it now. And then, the worst possible thing happened. The unmistakable sound of a loud bang echoed from the front door. One of the men, the one who had been standing off to the side earlier, had begun kicking at the door. The force of the blows rattled the frame, and Anna's entire body tensed in response. Her heart skipped a beat. She ran to the back of the house, frantically locking all the windows and doors. But the sound of the kick echoed in her ears, too loud, too desperate. She couldn't believe this was happening again. The first time, she had been lucky. They hadn't gotten inside. But this time, they were determined. The men weren't just trying to scare her. They were actively trying to break down the door. The door that stood between her and them was no longer a barrier. It was a countdown to whatever they planned to do next. Anna's mind raced as she grabbed her phone again. She was about to call the police once more when she heard a voice, a soft, almost disinterested voice, coming from the doorbell speaker. "Let us in, Anna," the voice said. It was the same voice from the first break-in, the same low, threatening tone, the one that seemed to know her, to know who she was. The words hit her like a physical blow. They weren't just after her things. They were after her family. The door shook again. This time the sound was more intense. She could hear the door frame creaking under the pressure, the sound of wood splintering ever so slightly. The men were getting closer. Anna's breath quickened and her mind raced. They were not going to break in again. This time she wouldn't be caught off guard. She grabbed the phone, dialed 911, and waited for the operator to answer. As the phone rang, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching the back door. Her blood froze. The men had circled around. They had already reached the back. The operator answered, and Anna's words tumbled out in a rush. "They're trying to break in again, please. You have to get here fast. They've already been here once, and now they're back. They're at my front door and my back door. I'm scared. Please, hurry." As she spoke, the door to the back of the house rattled violently. She could hear the heavy thuds of someone banging against it, trying to force it open. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Anna's heart stopped. The door had given way, and the men were inside. She didn't know how much longer she had. She only had a few seconds, maybe less. As she raced to the back of the house to grab her children, she heard a loud crash from the hallway. The men had already entered, and now they were getting closer. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the house, and Anna's heart hammered in her chest. It wasn't over. Not yet. And it was about to get worse. As Anna's heart pounded, the terrifying realization set in. These men weren't just trying to break into her home again. They were getting closer, and this time they were more determined than ever. The sound of the doorframe rattling under their force, the desperate knocks, and the chilling voice calling her name all made her fear for her life and the safety of her children. What did they want from her? And how much longer could she keep them at bay? Will Anna and her family survive the night? Or will the intruders finally succeed in their sinister plan? Stay tuned for part 11, The Gunman at the Door, where the danger escalates to a whole new level. Subscribe now to stay updated, and don't miss the next heart-stopping chapter. The nightmare is only getting worse. Don't miss out.